And today we are being joined by Tshediso Thinane, an independent analyst and economic commentator from the Free State Province. We're going to delve into the African National Congress's 2024 Election Manifesto. Thinane, with his extensive background leading the Youth Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Free State and nationally, and his involvement in the educational sector also brings a unique perspective on how the ANC plans to further the country's progress. And I use those words like very carefully, to further the country's progress, because it means that there is progress, although that there are many people who may think that there is no progress. And the ANC manifesto, themed "Let's do more together, vote for the ANC," outlines a commitment towards speeding up transformation, addressing economic challenges, creating jobs with a clear plan of action-based 6 priorities. It's a call to action for all South Africans to renew their mandate for the ANC, promising a future of equal opportunities and a better life for all citizens. In today's conversation, we will be reflecting on how the manifesto's priorities align with the needs and aspirations of South Africans, the viability of its proposals, and how does it intend to address ongoing challenges such as unemployment, economic stagnation, and social inequality. We are focusing on the ANC's manifesto not because we're doing them a favor, but because they are a party which is currently leading 8 provincial legislatures or 8 provinces, and is the party leading the national government. And it is a party, some may argue, that is almost on the verge and on the edge of exiting its power, its reign of power. And some would argue that it is a party that is going to retain its majority in many legislatures and all legislatures and in the national government. Mr. Thinane, what is your view? Is the ANC going to retain its power in all the legislatures? All of them, the nine legislatures and the national government.
Thamsanqa, let me take this opportunity and greet the viewers at home, and yourself and your production team back there. Thank you very much for inviting me. It is always difficult to invite a person that was actually bearing the lobbyist, character, adopting other characters. You can even see with my dress code today. But I think it is something that will always be there with you. What I posted on Facebook, I said, just a moment where you're thinking that you were actually bearing, your past, and it will always creep up with you. I think we are actually seated in 2 platforms here, Thamsanqa. The first one is the history, because if you go back to history, you check Frelimo, you check other liberation movements in Africa, they normally get defunct after 30 years, and today, I think this year is an anniversary, and I think part of the stress that ANC should be having now, the NEC, is to say, can we see ourselves through the 30 years? Secondly, it will be what the ANC is doing, what it intends to do, and what it has done that will determine as to whether they will be able to retain their majority on the 29th of May. Confidently seated here, I think I have my own views, and I believe that ANC should be retaining its majority, and I can provide my reasons. I'm not sure as to whether they will be able to, because there's a study that was done by Ipsos, if I remember quite well, because you would know that ANC is actually surrounded by a lot of forces. There's a SARA that came in now, there's a Moonshot Pact, there's a multi-party charter. There are a lot of collectives that are based on this coalition model that are actually coming together to drop the majority of the ANC.
It's I don't know, should we say the ANC is lucky that within the 25 years, 30-year period, it hasn't it hasn't sunk, just like the others, like the other movements that you refer to, the freedomers and so on. but I think let's move on. As someone who has worked closely with the youth and businesses in the Free State, how do you perceive the ANC's jobs plan, and regarding its feasibility and its impact on young South Africans?
Thamsanqa, I think first of all, would look at what the ANC has done since 1994 with regards to jobs in South Africa, which will inform what they are actually intending to do right now. First of all, the agenda of jobs, particularly for young people in South Africa, has never been based on the on parity with the economic performance of South African economy. Because even when that would be between 1997 and 2008, the GDP of South Africa was still growing at the rate between 3.5 and 4%, which is a healthy, growth. South Africa still had, a serious unemployment. I remember the time our unemployment rate was about 24-25%, and then there was the conference of the ANC that was in 2007 that actually changed the economic blueprint of the country from gear to new growth path, if I remember quite well. And then things just went from good to worse, ever since up to now. Because when you look at the current performance of the economy right now, our output is very low, because I think we're doing 0.23%. It was only, I think, the last quarter of 2023 when we did, I think, 1% of GDP growth. So what I'm trying to say to you is that the issue of employment in South Africa generally, whether you are a young person or mainstream, has never linked with the economic performance. Because even in a good day where the economy was doing quite well, our unemployment was still bad. So until the ANC can actually become honest, and tell us to say, colleagues, what's your view regarding the issue of employment in South Africa? Because I will just make you an example. I think I did that example last time to say, in my view and my analysis, South Africa is too small of a country for its people to be unemployed. We are very, very small. And then when you look at our capital investment market in South Africa, we're the best in Africa. Don't be faced by we are number 5. When you analyze our capital markets in South Africa, South Africa is still the best investment destination. Our industrial sector is still the best performing in Africa. So the issue is the appetite of the ruling party to deal with the issue of unemployment. Somebody actually said to me the other time to say, no, unemployment is actually an instrument for the ruling party to remain in power, because it doesn't make sense if you have a society of about 19 million economic active people with a GDP. And I think even now, I know that we have, I think about 80% debt to our GDP, which will motivate for us to visit IMF to borrow money and all of that. But we still have a pretty healthy, capital markets in South Africa, particularly for the private sector, because I know there's an obsession with government. Look at it this way. If you are, they are saying there was 65 million in South Africa. But when you look at if you less from that number, I mean the learners, you less the students, you less, people with adverse disability who cannot participate in the economy, the elderly, we are left with tentatively 19, 20 million economically active South Africans, of which about 7, 8, 9% of that actually people that are running businesses. And then the rest are people that are trying on a daily basis to apply for jobs. Some are working, they are middle class. So are you telling me, Thamsanqa, that it is difficult for the ruling party to actually create employment? And then when you look at maladministration in municipalities, wasteful expenditure in provincial departments, the state-owned companies, for all we know, all the best performing or rather used to be best performing state-owned companies have collapsed. You look at Denel, you look at Eskom, you look at Transnet. I was watching National Geographic the other time, and they said Transnet is one of the best, state-owned companies in the rail industry in the world, not just in South Africa. But it seems like other people are working very hard to make sure that they collapse it, so that it is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So in closing, I think there might be something that is actually happening in the ruling party with regard to jobs that all of us, do not know, because it doesn't make sense to say you have the best, capital markets in Africa, but your people are not working. And then I know in the Free State, the last time I checked, when you look at the expanded unemployment, was seated at about 67% youth unemployment in the province. And then if they push the way they do, within less than 3 years or so, would be seated at 100% youth unemployment in the province.
It's a disaster, and in the manifesto, the ANC commits to tackling the high cost of living through various measures. Based on your experience, which of these measures do you believe will be the most effective, and are there any areas you think require more attention? And maybe you may propose even alternative measures for to tackle this high cost of living.
Thamsanqa, don't do those things. I think the ruling party is so much obsessed with converting this country into a welfare state. Allow people to work. You give people, people are working in South. We know the dynamics in terms of race on the medical sector. That's why government came with an intervention of GEMS, for instance. But when you talk GEMS, you talk NHI, you are tweaking this unemployment with the SRD grants and all of that. It's like you want to drive the country to be 100% welfare state. Allow people to work. Liberalize the markets. The markets are liberated. We're a free enterprise, society. And then I don't think that the ruling party is actually sipping coffee from the same cup as all of us, because when you look at the performance of different economic sectors, that would be your mining, agriculture, even what we normally call the emerging markets, like your ICT, tourism, they can actually take up a large number of people that are not working. So people who are able to analyze things and apply their minds would say, but these colleagues are serious about this welfare thing, And how do you vote for a political party that is obsessed with keeping people, spoon feeding people? We have crippled the mindset of young people in the country to say that the ruling party will will build you an RDP house, but it's a toilet, and then you are going to complain and say, you get the money, you buy pole instead of buying a toilet, or the government will pay me a toilet. That's the mindset that actually been entrenched in the minds of young people today, and it's very destructive because you end up with when you check, the last time I checked the NYDA, I think we're sitting at about more than 560,000 unemployed graduates. We're not even dealing about people with no skills at all. And then we are here saying, no, there would be SRD grant will give people 350. When you look at the number of young people that are benefiting from the SRD grant, you are actually, you can actually take that money and invest it in the capital markets by boosting the local economy, fixing the LED offices in the municipalities so that they can be able to identify true businesses in the municipalities that can be able to take up the number. You can actually triple the number of young people who are actually benefiting for SRD grant, earning decent wage. It really doesn't make sense for me. And then I think maybe there's something that the ANC knows that we do not know, with regards to issues of jobs and their view as to how things should be done, Thamsanqa.
You also you speak about free enterprise and the need to move away from the social welfare state. And you also touch on the on this thing how there are about 500,000 some people who are skilled and have got some sort of skill, but these people themselves do not move into creation of enterprises. Why do you think there is that? Is there something maybe wrong with our education system?
I don't know, Thamsanqa. Maybe you'll advise me as to whether there's a link between your stomach hunger and education system. If you are hungry, you are hungry, and then if you have to go and hustle, it has nothing to do with education system. That's my view. I believe that the character that the ruling party has actually built over the years, because if you remember quite well, the ANC had a cumbersome task because the last phase of oppression was apartheid. That was in 1994, and then before that it was colonization. Before that it was slavery, which extends for about 400 years. Do you understand how sick some of the people might be? So the language that the ruling party was actually preaching at the time was to say better life for all. You are new as a new political party. You have never been to government, but you are saying to people better life for all. And then at some point, I think it was 2017, 2019, when they said together we can do more, which is something that was supposed to have said in 1994. So the expectation has always been there. Hence, I'm saying that maybe if we talk to one of them, they would be able to give us clarity as to what is it that you know about the issue of economic performance, employment creation, transformation of the economy that all of us do not know. You know, seated here myself as a member of the ANC, I'm confused. I don't understand what is actually happening here. So to answer your question directly, Thamsanqa, I would maybe think to say that um, because the example that I used previously, which is something that I've been saying even when I was speaking at the University of the Free State, I said you have, for instance, the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. I think they changed it to Department of Agriculture and Land Reform now. One of my colleagues there was saying that young people would be given land, and then immediately after that they would go to clubs and wear stilettos and don't go to farms and work, and then later on the land would either be taken back to government or it would be sold. You know, because people don't want to work the land. There's a case in the Eastern Free State of white people who left, you know, the farm for whatever the reason, and then they left the farm with the farm laborers. They registered a cooperative for them. So the young people in the farm were trained by the Department of Agriculture in the Free State, and then immediately after graduating, they took the certificate to apply for work and left the farm. You know, and then we'll come at some point talk about issue of entrepreneurship, to say as young people in South Africa, do we see entrepreneurship in the same? You know, I'm trying to study the concept of international political economy so that I can understand, you know, and benchmark with other parts of the world, the Asian tigers, China, you know, as to how are they actually finding their way around. But closing, I would
On that
say,
example that
yeah,
you're on, I apologize just a bit there. On that very example of
yeah,
agriculture, the young people who opened a cooperative of farming because they were
yeah,
left with the farm by their former employers.
yeah,
I was speaking to Dr. Roy Junkelson this morning, who made a
yeah,
similar example, but said that you know farming sometimes is either individual or family uh, oriented sort of business, because if you open it up to many people say that go and own that cooperative, they don't realize the potential of that farm, because
mm,
it is spread to too many people instead of it being towards a person or their family, so that they are able to create
mm,
generational wealth through that farm. Because if you're going to give
yeah,
20 people and say that you guys own that farm together, how are they going to
yeah,
reap profits out of that? And perhaps that is a
yeah,
model that we are using for our rural development and land reform and agriculture. Perhaps
yeah,
maybe there needs to be, a different approach to it, instead of that one.
yeah.
And
I
and
don't
and
agree.
Roy was saying that we need to
Yeah.
give them to families or to individuals. Do you agree with him?
I don't agree with him at the ideology level politically. You know, I have my views about himself and his
Hey,
political
you have to be
party.
very careful there.
Yeah, no, it's true, Thamsanqa. You can't find a block of people who benefited from oppression, and then later on you say you can liberate people. It doesn't make sense. But to deal with your point directly, I think he's correct. He's correct. In fact, remember, Thamsanqa, that agriculture is an economic sector, pretty much like ICT, you know, mining and others. You don't need millions of people to run businesses to run the thriving economy. You'd be surprised. I said this last time we spoke, and I'm going to repeat it again, that for these 7 million South Africans that are not working, you need only 4 or 5 people to create, you know, work for all those people, you know, because when we get an opportunity, we'll study the concept of industrialization. You know, of course, benchmarking on the first, second, and the third, particularly. I don't want to say much about the fourth industrial revolution, the three, but where he's correct is on the basis that you have, for instance, in the African context, you know, where you find Mavenda, for instance, Basotho, you know, Mazulu, back in the medieval days, who used to actually work the land for their economic survival at the time. You remember, even the currency at the time was not money, was livestock. So agriculture is something that has always been there to us as Africans. But how we actually change the concept, especially with the advent of I would say safely, between 1965 and 1985, somewhere in that area, and then actually take it further, to about 1945 when we started to see the policy of the apartheid government to dispossess black people of the land. They dispossessed people who were actually working the land. It's not like that land was for residential purposes. No, the land that was taken from people pockets in the Free State and other places, those people were working the land. That's how African people were actually surviving through agriculture. Plowing the land and actually benefiting from it. Because I think maybe he might be speaking from the commercial point of view. To say today, in the Free State, we have what we call Africans cooperatives like your OVK, VKB, Senvest, Cernic, you name them. And then they are actually working as conglomerates or maybe a collection of people that are operating and understanding the business of commercial agriculture, because honestly, now, if you take somebody who has stilettos and expect that person to go to the farm and work, you are actually killing it. So I'm speaking with a very huge equivocation, but I agree with him. Yes, from the commercial agriculture point of view.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Because land reform also has, has like many different elements. There's residential land that need to be considered and so on. But for purposes of commercial purposes, that's what we were talking about. You're correct. Now, the manifesto also highlights a focus on building a better Africa and world. In your view, how critical is this to South Africa's own developmental goals? And what role can the country play in achieving this on the continental stage?
If you remember quite well, Thamsanqa, I think it was 2006, is it? 2005-6, where the former president of the country introduced a program called NEPAD. His view was to say you can't solve South African problems without going to where they actually manifest. When you look at the influx of people from other parts of Africa, like Nigeria in Johannesburg downtown, the area of Rosettenville, Hillbrow, and all of that, it actually says that is our international relations policy issues bleeding. That's the view of Mbeki at the time. To say no, let's deal with the issue of influx of people from the African continent, from where they are actually coming from. And then I believe that it's a good thing in my view, because it actually shows that the ANC has actually done its work to make sure that the markets are liberated. Because what is actually attracting a lot of our African brothers and sisters to South Africa is primarily because for the past 30 years, ANC excellently managed to retain democracy. South Africa has always been stable. There's never been a war here. It's only now that there's a group of people that I don't know as to whether they have a severe psychological disorientation, who believe that they have to force themselves into elections. And if their leader is not elected, they will do the insurrection and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think for the past 30 years, the ruling party built a very nice democratic model that is actually working. The rule of law works in South Africa. Our former president went to prison. He did. There are cases that are that we know about that were our judicial system that actually dealt with, and then they were actually sticking. But to answer you directly, I serve in the ANC International Relations Subcommittee, and part of the work that we're actually doing there was to, away from the most commercial issues that we know about of Gaza and whatnot, we're actually looking at the issue of Basotho, the issues of the illegal mining and all of that, and then how the government of South Africa is actually having discussions with the government to deal with those issues like that. But I think I read it, and then their point is actually making sense. By the way, there's a new coalition called SARA, that is led by the former of Johannesburg. They actually last week adopted GEA as their economic blueprint. To say Mbeki was actually correct with GEA, and then now I think this is another way of the ANC saying Mbeki was correct with NEPAD. To deal with African issues, you need to go to where they manifest.
And finally, reflecting on this, on the ANC's vision for the next 5 years, in your analysis, what are the potential obstacles to fulfilling these promises, and what recommendations would you offer to ensure that these goals are achieved?
Yes, I think somebody from the ANC Thamsanqa must come and talk to us and tell us to say what is the problem with ANC creating work? What What's the problem? When you look, like I said, I made an example of our capital markets. They're working quite well. Our banking system is the best in the world. You understand? Our agricultural sector is one of the most competitive in Africa, if not the best. You understand? But now people are still not working. What's happening here? So if they can come and honestly talk to us and say, look, colleagues, somebody that was making insinuations, I would term it that, to say the ANC is actually, using unemployment as an instrument to remain in power. Maybe to a certain extent that person might be correct. So I just have to hear from them, sharing that information with us, because I'm running an enterprise. And then when you look at the structure of the development finance institutions in South Africa, they have way more than 150 billion in IDC, in CIFA, the regional DFIs like your FTC, ECDC, MEGA, but businesses are not funded. You understand? And when you look at how the apartheid government were actually financing agriculture, it was not based on the best business plan. It was based on the people that can be able to get up in the morning and go and get a tractor, work the land, maintain the land, harvest, and then build the economy. So we are speaking about 5 years from 30 years. Can you be able to fail at something for 30 years and correct it in 5 years? It doesn't make sense. But I think to a certain extent, maybe it will be from them, to actually come to us and say, colleagues, the person that actually said that we're using unemployment as an instrument to remain in power was correct, but we're going to change it. We're going to, like for an example, Thamsanqa, look at our state-owned companies. Why do you want state-owned companies to make profit? Why? Why do you want Eskom to make profit? Why do you want SABC to make profit? If unemployment is a pertinent an issue as it is right now, why don't you convert all state-owned companies into social enterprises with one mandate to create work? When Magashule is Magashule,
would you not need them to be, to be able to break even at least then, so that they do not just spend money and throw money down the drain?
No, not to throw it down the drain, Thamsanqa. What I'm saying is that instead of them generating revenue and giving it to Treasury to come back to us as fiscals, if they make profit, they create work. They must not take the money to Treasury. That's what I'm trying to say. You understand? Okay. Because if you look at all the state-owned companies, I'm not sure how many are there. We have Salcol, we have, they are countless. What is this one? I forgot the name of this state-owned enterprise. When you look at all of them, including LIMDEF, they are there. And then you are saying your work is just to create work. That's all you do, nothing else. Eskom must employ, if it comes to a push, must employ 300, 400, 500,000 people for as long as he can afford based on its operation. SAA, Safcol, you name them. And then you will see that we are actually going to free off a lot of people that are actually seated, not knowing where to go. You understand? Number two, it is on the issue, funding transformation of the economy. It's one thing that I wanted to talk about earlier. I never got an opportunity to do so, because when you look at the City Press this past weekend, they wrote about two nations in South Africa. They were looking at what a lot of people are actually calling either white monopoly capital or the Stellenbosch mafia. People can wake up today and start a company called Shoprite. Within less than 20 years, Shoprite is one of the fastest growing retail companies in the world, with more than 90% black people buying from them. But there's nothing actually happening with the township economy. In fact, the township economy is dying. NAFCO came up with a beautiful program called Lucky 7 when we were growing, and Viva, and they both died. Now the township economy is actually broken between the white monopoly capital and the foreigners. That is what is actually, in my view, driving the number of people that are not working sky high. So I don't really know. Hence, I'm saying that, closing on my part, Thamsanqa, to say the answers must actually come honestly from the ANC and tell us, to say, colleagues, what is it that you see that we do not see? There was a point where I wrote on social media and said, if the ANC is not going to treat unemployment like they did COVID, to shut down everything, to use 80% of our GDP to finance this thing, then I'm not going to take the ANC serious. I'm not. Because we were managed to spend 500 billion, 500 billion on COVID within 2 years. But we can't spend the same on unemployment. Thamsanqa, in Paris, you yourself seated here, you are a fine entrepreneur. If you can be given 10 million today, you can create work. you know, and a lot of yeah, I'm being serious here. There's a lot of fine entrepreneurs that are there that can readily be able to create work. But you go now to FDC and apply for funding, they are going to tell you that your business is not good enough. You know, and hence I'm saying that how can you offset the damage of 30 years in 5 years? Perhaps if they were honest to say, guys, give us another 30 years, we believe that we can actually be able to salvage something there. I think it could have been a different debate.
That is Tshediso Thinane. What is FSSDI, President Thinane?
Oh, is the school government body association that we formed in 2021. We are actually the fastest growing in the country right now. It's called Free State School Governance Institute. But we'll have a conversation about it, you know, about the SGB elections, the issues of fraud and corruption in schools and all of that. So that is primarily, I'm currently employed there as the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you very much, Tshediso Thinane, an independent analyst, also a member of the ANC, but very critical of the ANC. That shows the maturity that we have as a country, that, you know, you can be for something and still be against some of the things that it does. Tshediso Thinane, until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That was Tshediso Thinane. I think for today, we are out. We shall see you. There's a possibility of engaging, I'm going to say it, with the MEC for Public Works tomorrow. You shall be kept abreast as it happens. Thank you very much.